I'll get out of the way, but how do you feel about the sweepstake win? Obviously, you won the Design Truth Prize. So
Yeah, it's lovely. I completely forgot that you'd kind of topped it up a little bit as well. So that was
yeah,
quite a nice little
it's
surprise.
all right. Yeah, so well done.
Congratulations.
One to watch
Yeah,
for
it
the
was.
one to watch for the World Cup.
Yeah, it was. To be honest, obviously when I was watching, I wasn't thinking about winning that sweepstake, but it was kind of like the day after where I went, "Oh, it's not all bad."
Yeah.
It's not all bad at all, no.
How did you get on, Drew? You had hungry.
I don't know. Honestly, it was like such a non-event. The sweepstake, once it pulled, I was like, okay, I'm out.
Yeah.
I might get like the most red cards or the fanciest hat in the crowd if we did spot prices or something like that. I'm like, okay, Hungary in that group. I can't even remember who was in their group, but it's like three
great.
big teams and Hungary. Like, oh, cool, I'm out. And as a Welshman, like, there's probably not a lot of skin in this game for me.
I think it was France, Germany, and Portugal. I think.
Yeah, you gave it a good go. To be fair,
I'm sure they
complain.
tried their best.
Yeah, they did it right.
I'm sure they meant every bit of it. I don't think they even got an honourable mention on the sweepstake. So yeah, again, another reinforcement of my complete normality in society.
Yeah. Well, so thanks for obviously spending the time to join us today, Nick. I do know you listen to the odd episodes, but like all things, if you could just introduce yourself to the masses, who you are and what you're about, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Nick Chubb. So I am the lead industrial designer at IDC. So we're a design consultancy in Datchet, just across the river from Windsor. And I kind of head up our sort of industrial design strategy, front end research, and sort of overall design direction of all of our projects, and also our digital marketing as well.
Nice. I can validate that because I spoke to you yesterday and you had just like a bucket load of post-it notes behind you. So you kind of you hit that stereotype on the head straight away.
Is that, sorry, have I not delivered? Were you expecting a whole load
it's not as great.
Post-its in the background?
And then you had a moment when you was like, I don't know if I want to put this in the background because I don't know if I'm showing anything.
Oh yeah, that's
that
true.
I shouldn't do. So there's always that one. But yeah, we know the feeling about confidentiality because anyone that's a keen Design Truth observer will realise that there is currently the curious case of episode 30, which has disappeared, and that was because of a particular company that's named after a fruit. So we can't say that. We can't mention that particular company. So if we
I think we should redub it and just go shh over every time it gets mentioned. No.
So if you're currently kind of on a listen back exercise of like, okay, I'm on episode 29, where's episode 30 gone? Unfortunately, it's disappeared, guys. So you're going to have to go straight on to episode 31, and maybe one day it will reappear, but not in the meantime. So hopefully you won't say anything too controversial over the next hour or so, Nick. That I have to take another episode down.
Can't promise anything.
And the sponsors won't be too happy if we have to take 2 episodes down in a month. All of a sudden, me and Drew will start getting a bit of a reputation. So I'm
sure we'll be fine.
Another one.
I suppose it'd be good just to start at the beginning, really, Nick. As you probably can tell with a lot of the episodes we have, we tend to start at the beginning of someone's career and go off on tangents at different kind of points. But you started off over at was it Sheffield Hallam?
Yeah, so I was up in Sheffield.
How northern are you, like Nick? Because you sound like, compared to most of the Shoreditch bandits that we get on, how northern are you? Because you sound properly northern.
I'm from Doncaster.
I'll give that.
So just a little further north of Sheffield. I was actually born in Hook in Hampshire. I just don't sound like it because I moved when I was about 5. But yeah, I'm from Doncaster. Went to Hallam, did the course up there. Really enjoyed it. Really good. Did some like good live projects and stuff like that. And then I'd always kind of done bits of branding and graphic design and logos. I'd always kind of done that on the side. And then over the course of my time there, I'd worked with a marketing agency, but the creative director studied product design. So for quite a long period of time, I was kind of being mentored by him, doing bits of marketing and branding and graphic design and all this sort of stuff because he owned an agency, but then working on physical product stuff at the same time. So it was kind of an odd, quite a unique little mix. And then I did a few little internships, bit of furniture, worked with another agency in Bakewell doing, that was an agency who specialised in cookware and kitchenware products. And then after that, I got a job at Mamas and Papas. So that was my first entry in doing like push chairs and high chairs and toys and stuff like that. And then to Life Venture and Life Systems and Little Life doing travel gear and outdoor products and baby carriers and water filtration bottles and all sorts of kind of like travel gear across those three brands. And there was a fair bit of soft goods for them as well doing that. And then to IDC.
You've been there for a while. So you've been there a while, haven't you?
Yeah, that was towards the start of 2015.
Okay. Christ. Yeah, but you've been there a while now. Was that always what you wanted to do when you left uni? Did you have this like plan of being an agency, or did you just thought, oh, just landed a job and see what happens? Did you have a grand plan or not?
I just knew, I think everyone when they graduate in their mind, they've always got just well-known brands is just the thing that most people want to gravitate to. And so Mamas and Papas was just kind of this, because they were quite a well-known brand, it's the sort of brand that people knew. And also just the types of products as well. Like there's a reasonable amount of complexity to them, not just technically, but in terms of usability and user experience of a push chair.
Yeah.
But then you've also got the mix of complexity from a technical standpoint and then complexity from a compliance and regulation standpoint.
Yeah.
So
if a baby dies, if a baby dies, you're going to know about it quite soon. Aren't you?
Exactly. Yeah.
So what? I mean, that sounds like you've been thrown a lot of different curveballs all at the same time. What do you think was the big thing that you learned, or that you went, I got to make a shift? Was there anything like that when you went to Mamas and Papas?
I think I don't know about things that were a major shift that I had to take on board, but I think one of the things that served me from there was that, especially helping me in consultancy life as well, is just understanding all the things that are going on in the background of an in-house brand.
Okay.
And so even just all the different types of teams and roles and knowledge of who things usually go through to get to a certain point. And I'm not sure about like major shifts that I had to take on board, but just understanding just the other roles that are at play within product development was probably a big one. And just the depth, because it's not, I think time is treated very differently between, well, I can't speak for every in-house brand in every consultancy, but from my experience of the agencies I've been in and the in-house teams I've been in, time is treated very differently in the within the in-house teams I've worked with. It's not that there isn't deadlines to work with. There absolutely is, but they're normally these deadlines that are weeks or months away that have to be delivered by. But how you use your time hour to hour within that period, there's less kind of drill down to that level.
Every hour doesn't need to be billable, does it?
Exactly. Whereas in consultancy, it can very much be, you have X amount of hours.
Yeah. Which do you feel more natural in out of those two environments?
I think consultancy potentially utilizes it, or in a more obvious way, more of my skill set. I think just in terms of business development and marketing and sales, I think having just studied and spent a lot of time learning about sales and marketing and business, I think consultancy makes
Makes better sense.
and more of an obvious use of that skill set, I think.
Yeah.
But you have to appreciate there might be the odd in-house listening to this, Nick, and you don't want to rule yourself out of a potential career move.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
later
the
down
thing.
the line.
So no, I totally get it. So even within, that's why I'm hesitant to say that actually, because even within an internal team, you're still having to sell and you're still having to articulate the value of different activities within product development.
Yeah.
But rather than selling to an external client who's paying you for them, you're having to sell the value of those activities and selling the reason of spending a certain amount of time on something to a board of directors. So you're still having to have deep knowledge and understand the value of what you're doing and articulate that value, but just to a different audience.
I totally agree. And most of my career has been in-house with bits of, freelance and consulting and all that and agency work. But I would totally agree. You've still got, you've almost still got a client as an in-house designer. You've still got other stakeholders. They might be higher up decision makers, or they might be some of your peers in different departments. But you've still got to, as you say, demonstrate the value of taking the time to do the research and to not just draw it and go, okay, let's count it up and let's build it. There's other activities that perhaps don't seem worthwhile. You're going to say, well, how long will it take you to make this model or to do this design? So I have to do it once. I can get it done in an afternoon, but I'm going to do it like a bunch of times. I'm going to do it many times over, and we're going to throw most of it away. But we're going to have like documented decisions. It's a different set of conversations. But I'd agree with what you say. Yeah, for sure.
And I think one of the things, again, just from my experience of the different brands that I've worked with as a consultant, but also at the time being in-house versus consultancy, is that I think one of the things that a lot of in-house teams don't do very well, because they don't inherently need to, like a consultancy does, is their understanding of how much they understand the total time that's been thrown at a project, and they might understand the capital expenditure that's been thrown at a project. But in terms of resource, I think there can be a not as much foresight into, well, this is realistically how many products you can actually develop in a certain amount of time because of the resources that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I do think consultancies kind of have to know that information, because it's whether they can take a project on or not. Then I just feel like in the in-house teams I've worked in, they've been guilty of almost trying to do too much. It's it's definitely just a very different environment, but I've definitely enjoyed both. I also quite enjoyed, you do it on a project by project basis as part of a consultancy, but just becoming an expert in a very specific product category.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was at Life Venture and Life Systems, those outdoor brands that you'll find in Blacks and Cotswolds and Snow and Rock and all those types of places, you'd go to trade shows in Germany and just kind of knowing the competition inside and out. There's just a depth to that. Becoming an expert in a product category, it's quite fun as well.
Drew is the catheter man, aren't you, Drew?
I was. Well, I was one of them, but I don't know the names of the guys at Color-Plastic, for example. But they are the catheter.
They are the catheter kings, yeah.
The catheter guys, yeah. They launch product. I've said too much.
do you think, just whilst we're on this kind of topic, Nick, do you think sometimes, I don't know if we've spoken about this before, but sometimes we almost put kind of in-house and agency in a little bit of a box, but actually it's a bit more of a nuanced thing, whereas not all in-house companies are the same, but also on the flip side, not all agencies are the same.
And that's why I'm very hesitant. I would never speak very too. I can just say based on my experience, but I do think that people seem to, a lot of questions I get around sort of, what's better to start your career in consultancy or in-house? It's like, well, what are you doing for starters? Like, what's the
Yeah.
job you're doing? Who are you working with? What are you working on? How is the team structured? Because you could have a company that has 50,000 employees, but actually the team of what you're delivering could be 3 people.
Yeah.
Or you could work in a small agency that's just 5 people, but actually is a larger team that you're working in. So I think people are a bit black and white.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the sheer scale as well of either of them. It's like you say, you know, your agency could be 2 or 3 people in a shed, you know, working all hours, or you could be one of thousands. And likewise, if you're in house, there could be thousands of people. You could have your own specific campus for R&D, or you could be having to demonstrate that, do you know what, we've actually got an R&D department in this company. And again, you could be in a company of thousands of people, or a very small thing, but you're the only very small team. Again, likewise, there's also the flip side of that. Is, what are you like? Are you a dog person or a cat person?
Yeah. What are you like as an actual person?
Sorry?
What are you like as an individual? What are you like? How's your personality? You know, what do you enjoy?
Yeah.
What do you not enjoy?
And I've always referred to myself as being a house cat when it comes to like most of my career. Is that I know my surroundings really, really well, and I'm probably not going to have to go far beyond those. And there's a certain pace of life that comes with that as well. You know, I know that I can turn my machine off and go home when I need to go and pick the girls up from school. And I think with a lot of agencies, I mean, I'm saying this as an outsider.
What you're saying,
you don't go home. You might go out and get a coffee and then come back and carry on until it's done. I mean, it sounds. I mean, I'm talking horror shows, but we've certainly had a few titles, haven't we, Brad?
Yeah. It is intense, isn't it? You know, agency life is, you know, it can not be for the faint-hearted, right? You know, it is.
Yeah, I mean, the pace of work is quick, but what I would say about IDC is I think we do have a very, very good work-life balance and don't slip into that cliche.
Yeah. What's it like working at IDC out of interest? You've been there for a while? I
think it's great. I think there's...
Your boss is listening, so...
I do genuinely think that for someone's career, the variety of products, but the variety of users of different products, the variety of materials and processes and technologies, it's definitely just a really great, just the variety is a big part of it and keeps people there for quite a while.
Yeah, and it's a big kind of percentage of stuff that reaches market as well. So even though you're in agency land, you know, it's quite a high percentage of things that actually reach the shelf.
Yeah, so obviously there's a number of agencies who may be a little more of a concept house where they'll take it to like concept visuals. But yeah, at IDC we did a 3-year, it was either 3 years or 5 years study over past projects to see with regards to revenue, how much was related to work that went into the market and into production. And it was over 90%. So, you know, anyone who works for IDC is going to get products to market. And that, you know, even interns who are with us for 12 months will likely work on stuff that goes to market.
Which is refreshing for an agency, right? Because it's not
as well. Yeah. Like if you're a prospect going into that team, or if you're trying to knock on the door, that's such an exciting thing to have as a carrot dangled in front of you again. Because we talked about it before, but I sort of see that as my trophy cabinet, you know, when I'm finished and out living on the beach, and because at some point in the next 20 years I'm going to win the lottery. I'm not going to get there through my career. But, you know, it'd just be nice to look at all the things that you've designed that people have used, and whether they've been successful or not, but they've just made it out there into the real world. That's just so satisfying and exciting. So to hear that, like, even if you're an intern, you're more than likely, just based on the statistics, gonna get something out there into the real world is, oh man, that's so cool.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a big part of, you know, why we become designers as well. Is I became a designer because I'm passionate about products. I'm not passionate about the things that you have to do as a means to get to that end, but I am. But do you know what I mean? I'm passionate about products. I'm passionate about design, and it's solving real problems with real products for real people, for real businesses.
Did you ever have a moment where you sort of saw something and was there a product or something as a youngster where it clicked? Was there something where you went, "All right, I get it now," or was it more?
I think the click moment wasn't necessarily a product, but I think when you're young, you are aware that there is a job title called a graphic designer. And it's normally the kind of the first thing within design that you are aware of as some sort of designer. And not many people, well, even if you meet the average, 40-year-old would know what a product designer is, but they'll know what a web designer is. They'll understand that someone
we don't even know what a product designer is anymore.
Exactly. Let's not get into that one. But you know what I mean, though. But like, people are aware that there are web designers and fashion designers and interior designers and graphic designers. And so I just always used to draw logos, just drawing logos and doing. Do you remember the game Worms?
Yeah.
Worms 2 was like unbelievable, and that was made by a company called Team 17. And when I was in primary school, we created our own game called Battle Axe. And it was kind of similar to Worms. And the idea was that we were going to send it to Team 17. I don't think it even happened in the end, but we kind of created this game. And I was just the guy that would do the drawings and the sketches and the logo and all that sort of stuff. And that was in primary school. So then, and I'd always kind of built stuff in the garage. I remember like one of our streets near our house was like quite a long downhill. So it was just sort of screwing wheels to platforms and just bolting all sorts of crap onto it that you could hold on to. And then when I got to high school, I was just lucky enough that they actually did product design from like year 7.
Oh, wow.
Which when I obviously, do these portfolio improvement programs and stuff, when I talk to the average designer in America, they've only like discovered product design, industrial design, when they're like 21 as a little option as a course when they're already at university, and then they might decide to major in it or whatever. Whereas I'd kind of done bits of DT at primary school. I'd always done graphics. So then by the time I got to high school and it was like, there's this thing called product design where you design physical products, I just went, that's it. That is the thing. Yeah. Where all of these things have clicked into place. And so I specifically remember thinking, I'm going to be a graphic designer. And then when I kind of got introduced to products, it was like, no, scrap that. Product designer, that's it. Lock it in, job done. And then I've just never taken my eye off that since I was about 13.
You know what, that's so familiar, because I used to, instead of going out and playing football with the other boys, I used to stay in with a couple of my mates in primary school and draw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then I started drawing like car and band logos specifically, like changing them a little bit, and then I was like, oh, I'll be a car designer, because like my cousin was a graphic designer, so I was like, oh, I'll be a graphic designer. Then I was like, no, I'll be a car designer because that's so cool. You get to make something at the end of it. And then I realized at some point that, oh, you could do that with lamps and chairs and like knives and forks. Amazing. Yeah. That. Just like, I want to do that. That's incredible. The notion that someone has to sit down and think about how you're going to make and how many of these like spoons are you going to make, and what materials, what colors, like what's the radius on the back of this? Should we put a little spigot on the back so that when you sit it down on the tabletop, it doesn't just get gravy everywhere? I just love it. Like I love details.
So there's those details of form. It's also like the commercial aspect linked into it as well. There's a great scene in the film Cocktail with Tom Cruise where he says, I've forgotten who's opposite him, but he says, we're surrounded by millionaires. And he's like frustrated at the fact that he's kind of not one. And he talks about the flugel binder. I don't even know if that's the proper name, but it's the bit of plastic at the end of your shoelace. And he's like, there's a guy who owns a factory making flugel binders and he's a millionaire. And then he looks at the little umbrella in his cocktail, the mini umbrella, and he's like, Mr. Mini Umbrella is a millionaire. I'm probably butchering that scene, but I just remember thinking, yeah, like, that is true of all, like, just that commercial side of it as well. And then I just remember as well, just having I just used to piss my parents off so much with the amount of questions of why things were done a certain way. So I think that was just another thing that was another factor of things falling into place. And I specifically remember one of them. And I was like, you know, at the end, when you finished your meal, it's polite if you put your cutlery together on the plate. Yeah, and I just remember going, why? Like at some point in history, someone went, right, if I leave these two bits of metal apart from each other, you're rude. Yeah. And if you put those two bits of metal close together, you're a polite person. Who decided that at one point in history? And the other one is like, if I wear a cap at a dinner table, like, so I've got a bit of fabric on my head, and if I don't take it off, I'm rude. Who decided these things?
I don't know.
Get it all off your chest. Get it all off your chest.
Oh, man, I think the sentence I've probably heard more than any other is, "Oh, just give it a rest."
Yeah. So my daughters asked me like the same sort of things. I'm like, put your knife and fork in a Q position on your plate so that I know you're done. So that if I take your plate away and you're not finished, I'm not being the bad man, right? If you put it there, I know you're done and I can take it away at the end, right? And I'll either get, like, even if I'm wearing a hat and I'll sit down and like, oh shit, take it off. Sorry, that's so rude of me. And they're like, why? Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's rude, so just accept it. Like, you can have some meaningless traditions, please. You can change the rules on things that don't matter, but on things like a hat on your head and a dinner table, it's bang out of order.
Yeah, and that's before we get in, all those things that make it so interesting. That's before we get into, how things are done the way they are technically, and manufacturing, and just all these little. I'm a big one for just finding out new things about different objects. I've just picked up this pen. It's not something I've just learned, but like on your biro, if you've got one near you, you'll see the hole halfway up the stem. You'll see the hole in the middle, and the reason that's there is that when the pen's loaded in, there's a cap on the top, and if you didn't have that hole there, you wouldn't be able to push that cap on, so it's allow the air to escape. And there's just little things like that.
I bet you're great at a dinner pie.
Generally talking bollocks.
Yeah. Just with with like, I don't know, like the fiance's family or something. And you've got all these fun facts. I can imagine it all go. I imagine it goes down pretty well.
Take your hat off, Grandad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put your knife and fork down properly.
So. Just you put something up on Instagram a couple of days ago. I don't know if you remember it, but you had a bit of a backlash. I don't know if it was necessarily a backlash, but people were kind of responding to you with opinions, which is normally a good thing, I suppose. And it was about the topic of job titles. I didn't know if you wanted to go into that in a bit more depth at all of what.
Can do. Yeah, it wasn't really a strong opinion.
No.
I was just kind of throwing a thought out there, to be honest. But basically, I'd seen quite a few people who were senior designer title with kind of about a year and a half of experience. Yeah. And for me, when I graduated, in my head, like 8 years was like the senior stepping stone. I don't know why, but that was just
that's just how it is. Maybe that's just a meaningless tradition. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe I'm guilty.
Yeah,
myself. But I don't know. It just seemed a little odd that someone with a year and a half of experience was a senior designer. And I get different businesses have different structures with different titles and different meanings to these titles. But I just think I'd worked in enough teams and with enough people and different structures, so there's that awareness that things are done differently. But I just had a feeling that there was the potential that if a senior title is given too soon, that if if that person then thinks that that title of now becoming senior comes with it an expectation to have the answers to the things they were once asking a lot of questions around.
Yeah.
That it just, I think it has the potential for certain people in certain jobs with a certain personality type that if the ego got away with itself, you could then...
What do you mean designers have an ego? What do you mean?
Just potentially stop asking
The questions.
all the innocent and humble questions that you did that when maybe there wasn't that expectation to have the answer. So it's just a little thought that maybe
is it a recent
senior
trend?
A title with the word senior in it, in combination with being at the start of your career, it was just a question and a thought of, is that a great combination?
Yeah.
Does it have the potential to limit growth if it stops you from potentially having that humility and asking so many questions and reaching out for help?
Is it just a recent observation, whereas in like this wouldn't have happened 5-10 years ago, but it's just something that's creeping in more and more, where you're kind of seeing, oh, that person's the head off one always gets me. It's like, how can you be a head of design when you graduated last year? You're just a
but
designer.
It wasn't anything against anyone who is in that position where, you know, they have 18 months experience and have been promoted to a senior. It's nothing against them. It's just more of an interest in the decisions of the leadership team who choose to structure it in that way and make that decision to make that title. It's nothing against.
I doubt the designer has kind of kicked the bolt down and said, look, where's my senior title? They just had an appraisal one day and someone went, you know, here's your promotion, and it's
I don't know, I push back on that because, like
really?
I said, I've worked in a number of companies now.
Is this in Switzerland as well?
Say in medical devices, right, where there is that like ranked progression. Okay, where you've got your annual performance review, and if you've been there for a certain amount of time and you've hit like key performance reviews in the right way for that amount of time, then you'll get the senior, then you'll get manager. You don't have to be managing something or somebody. It's more that, yeah, you have to do those activities in order to be able to tick the boxes, but this is the next title, and that spreads across the board. So if you're a researcher or a designer or a specialist in regulations or whatever, you're going to come in as maybe a junior or maybe just like no prefix. Then you'll get the senior, but you can't go from that one to the management position, even if you've been managing a team, even if that's like in-house, out-house, whatever. So yeah, I would definitely say that I know, and I've been sucked into that trap well, listen, I'm ready for the senior position now because that gives me this salary banding and this expectation of roles and responsibilities and this package and all of that. That said, I do think there's something that we can learn from academia, whereby you've got lecturer, senior lecturer, professor, maybe not those titles obviously, but there's something that we could do within the industry to kind of give that bit of like more of a lateral comparison. So within the team, yeah, you might be the senior member. Are you a senior designer? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on the person and on the thing. But it's an important question. I don't know how we go about answering it. I mean, the role of someone of like an organization like BEDA, if we were to all go, you know what, everybody that's working in this industry, join BEDA, let's have the conversation and let's sort all this kind of stuff out. Maybe it's something new, maybe it's just...
I don't think it has to be, I don't think anything has to be standardized. I'd leave every individual business to make their own decisions. I don't think that needs to be standardized. It was more just a question of, it would be a great shame if somebody, upon getting a senior title, then started acting in a different way because of that, in a way that limited their own growth.
That's
interesting. More just if that was a...
And likewise, you'd move to a new team and you'd been the senior, and then you move to a team of like really well experienced designers that are 3 to 5 years in and not calling themselves seniors. And I don't know, chances are, let's say, without picking any individuals because we don't know any of them, you probably have your ass handed to you. I mean, you'd certainly learn quite quickly that, okay, a couple of years in, you might have done very, very well, but there is no substitute for just time served.
Mm. It's what that expectation is of that person that's in that position. So they've been made a senior after 2 years, and then they decide to move on to a different job. Is there still that same expectation that they would be a senior elsewhere? I'd imagine a promotion in title is a promotion in pay as well. So it's that kind of conversations when they decide to move on. It's like, have they started to set themselves some quite unrealistic expectations because they've been given an element of seniority in title, but it's not necessarily the case across the board. So it's whether they can perhaps understand that maybe you won't get the same gig elsewhere.
Yeah. I think most of them do have that awareness.
Yeah. So it's as you might be aware, it's graduation season at the minute. My LinkedIn tells me there's lots of students waving their bit of virtual paper saying they've got a 2-1 or something. So congratulations to those that have made it this far. One question we had for you, Nick, was looking back in your career, is there anything you wish you knew now that what's the question? Anything you wish you knew when you was a graduate that you knew now? Is that the one, Drew?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to go with that one. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Essentially, it's a roundabout way of asking for you to give some advice to graduates. But
I've always that question has come up a few times, just giving different guest lectures and talks and Q&As and stuff like that. And I always struggle to think of, if I frame it as something I wish I'd have known, I always struggle to think of something. But if I just think of something that I think is worthwhile for others to know, or a particular mindset to have, whether I wished I knew it at the time is different. But I think I was kind of lucky enough to just have certain people around me right at the beginning, even through uni, even before industry, who, and this is why I like to be very real in the talks that I give at universities, because normally there's a bit of a reality check required, I think. And I think that's what served me very well, was getting that reality check incredibly early. In that, I suppose the advice I'd give is that I think it's a really, really good habit to see going to university and getting a degree in design as one piece of the pie chart of your design education. But it's kind of the norm that people think, oh, well, I did product design at A level, or maybe I went to college and got this thing, and I go to uni. I just think that if you just do the expected norm of, you went to uni, you did the projects that was the absolute bare minimum, you just went to the lectures that you were required to go to, and at the end of it, let's say you do get a 2-1, or even if you got first or whatever, that if you just kind of did the average or just what was expected of you through those 4 years, the maths is there in terms of how many jobs there are for how many graduates. The chances are you're not going to land a job. So I just think I kind of had someone who said to me that, and I think people normally have a pretty good idea of where their abilities probably are in relation to the other people that are in their year at uni. But I just kind of had it drilled into me that, yeah, that's a very small pond, by the way. You need to realise that
there's other universities.
The big wide world, you better up your game.
There's like 70 courses or something now in the UK doing that. So, you multiply that. How many people around you can you see in your final year? Fantastic.
Yeah. So I just think if you just get by doing what you're expected to do, chances are you're not going to land a job. So I just think it's a really good habit to see you going to uni and doing that stuff as just one piece of the pie chart of your design education. I honestly do not believe that an education is something that you receive. I think an education is something that you pursue yourself and make happen. And, you know, there was one other question that got sent in around sort of, oh, what if I've never worked in consultancy? Is somebody going to think about me or consider me? It's like, well, just because you've never worked consultancy, you need to be more resourceful. Man. Like, how about you go and write 100 people who are the senior designers at consultancies and try and get on a half an hour Zoom call with them? Do you reckon if you sent that message to 100 people, even if 6 of them respond and jump on a call with you, and you were managed to get in front of them and ask questions for half an hour to 6, do you think your understanding of the considerations and factors of what makes an effective employee at a design consultancy, do you think your understanding and awareness might increase or decrease from doing that? It's like, and just that scale of action in everything to increase that education. And the amount of people who they'll do group projects and then it just stays as it is. And they're like, oh, how can I present it? Because I don't like it. It's like, look, no one's chaining you to this project. if you were part of a group project and you didn't like the output, there's nothing stopping you working on it for another 6 months and taking it way beyond what the expectation was for the handing of that project within the circle of academia. I just think you've got to see it as a total education, not just, oh, going to uni is the thing you do to get a job. I just think that's a really healthy mindset.
We always bang on about attitude, don't we, Drew? And and that's a big part, isn't it?
I'll fess up. I mean, like, I didn't work hard enough at uni. I don't, or at least I don't think I did. I did. I don't think that I read enough. I don't think that I like pestered my tutors enough. And I think, you know, it shows in the way that I feel about what I graduated with. But you're right in terms of like afterwards, I don't know, like a year's worth of trying to get work. I don't know, like after my first job, when I was starting to go for, I was trying to get more closer to industrial design as I saw. I'd taken a job that paid them and I didn't have to move back in with that. And I revisited my whole portfolio because I had things from uni that were hand drawn, and after a year or so of carrying them around, they were tatty. So I went back in and revisited them and thought, actually, I really don't like this thing anymore. This is something I did, 2 or 3 years ago, and I know I can do a better job of it, and revisited that. Not under any false pretenses. It was just like, if I'm going to present my work, I don't want to present stuff that I'm really embarrassed by. So again, it's like, it's as you say, it's not something you just receive. You have to keep going back. If this is representing you right now, then make sure it represents you right now, and all the things that you've read of your own volition. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, when I was in uni, we didn't have Audible. Yeah, you can get books on tape, but now Audible is this amazing tool where you're basically in the sort of the beginning of Act 2 of the first Matrix movie, where you can plug earphones in, and within a few days, you've learned a whole book worth of stuff that otherwise you'd have to sit and read, and it would take you ages, because if you're anything like me, you read for half an hour and fall asleep. You can just download stuff into your brain.
Yeah.
Like there's really no excuse. Even someone like me, I'm like, I wish I had that then, because I probably would have. Well, I'd like to think I would have been a bit more involved, but laziness and young man syndrome certainly held me back.
You've made
I just think to a lot of these people who kind of, the last question is like that, like, will I be considered if I've never worked consultancy? Well, you can't just sit and think that everything's going to come to you. Whereas, what if you wrote another 50 people and said, I've never seen the inside of a design consultancy. I'd love to just come and visit for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour and just have a tour to see what it's like. Yeah. Go and write 50 people. Yeah. I mean, LinkedIn's there to use.
You know, it's
just
also
go and send that message and make this stuff happen. Because then, if you had taken those steps, I just think there's a level of proactiveness.
Yeah.
That
there's definitely people who have been on this podcast that could offer you 10 minutes for a coffee and a chat, half an hour maybe for like a little talk and a conversation, that I know that they want to be helpful to the youngsters and like want to build community. I won't name names because it's not fair to do that, right? But go through and have a listen, and you'll see.
As long as you're not rude about it, I'm sure they'd.
Yeah. Like,
they'd give
I
time.
think I think I agree with you on this. But yeah, as you say, I'm totally in the wilderness, and I'd just like to come in and see what I'm missing out on. Phrase it however you want to phrase it. Yeah.
You did forget to shamelessly promote the Design Truth Design Directory there, though, Nick, which is a shame because that is the go-to resource for someone in that. Yeah, sorry about that. What's it? Just out of interest, has anything strange ever happened to you when you was doing a uni lecture? Because I had one once. I don't know if I ever told you this. I had a guy once that was I won't name the university, but he was cooking a lamb shank during my talk. Have you ever had anything like that before?
Oh, it was on a Zoom call.
Yeah,
when you said, I pictured 300 people and one of them cooking a lamb shank.
Yeah, he was cooking. I was halfway through. I stopped him and, have you got the potatoes on, mate? Have you got it all going on? I just thought it, but it kind of, whilst I found it quite funny, it does kind of go back to the attitude piece of like some days I look back on it and go, it's quite rude.
Yeah. Here's the other one, right? Is that like they have people from industry go into universities. Who are these people paying $9,000 a year and don't even turn up to the talks when industry people come in? Who are you? What are you doing?
Yeah. That's
it's
realize the amount that it costs and like for how long and how much a month you're going to be paying that back for. Fucking turn up. Just at least go and get your money's worth.
Yeah. But even like that, even at the end of the spectrum of education, we just had the Made in Brunel graduate show. The amount of people, I mean, it's opening night, loads of industry people come in, either not stood by your stand, not approaching anyone, I'm stood there. I just know.
You're like, I'm Nick from IDC, and you're not even speaking to me. I mean, how outrageous is that? Was that what he was like?
Not to say that, like, I'm that important that you should be, but that would just. I was shocked, and like no CVs, portfolios.
You're never going to get a better opportunity.
You're
never going to get a better opportunity than actually seeing the whites of someone's eyes, are you? These digital tools are great, but I mean, I was up in London the other week just having a beer with some people, and it's far better than a Zoom call. Do you know what I mean? In terms of building a relationship with people. So do better next time.
I don't know. I'm just a big. I love incredibly proactive people. So anyone that we hire, anyone who's just like different level of proactiveness is normally what
you go for.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you found? How did your recent? Because I know you guys were looking quite recently for some graduates, but you impressed with the applications that came through and different than what you expected?
We've not stopped hiring, to be honest. I mean, we hired a design engineer, mechanical engineer 2 months ago, so 2 months in. And then we've just hired a graduate from an industrial design course at Loughborough who just started last week. Last week. Might have been this week. Oh, right, got it. It's blurred. And then we've got somebody else joining us next week. Young guys, an industrial designer. So it's all kind of,
and it's in terms of the quality that's come through. It's all been really good, or has it been different to maybe other times you've looked for people? Or
there's definitely the shift I've seen is. And I posted about it not too long back, but the key shot skills are incredible. They're absolutely incredible. And I think there's a generation, the people who've graduated this year and probably the 2 years before that as well, have spent more time in key shot than any other workshop graduating or generations before that. And it's incredible. It's not that.
Is it a bit scary?
It's not that that's the only thing you're looking for.
Yeah.
But it is. I am always very impressed by they've just very, very clearly spent a lot of time learning that particular skill.
Mm.
And then the thing that's normally just the physical development is, I'm always interested if more time has gone into one skill, and it's not to say that it's either or, but if more time has gone into something, usually time has not been put somewhere else. Obviously, you have the people who will fire on all cylinders, but I can't help but think that the place where that has come out from is the physical development.
In terms of form, functionality, mechanics?
Physical models for the purpose of, I was talking to one of our junior designers today about this actually, in that I think there are things that come up in product development that make you go, okay, a decision has to be made here. Therefore, we should make a model to find this out that allows us to make that decision and then proceed.
Yeah.
But I think there's also less obvious things that would benefit from a model being made, and that model will bring significant value and highlight other things.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a really obvious thing that made you go, okay, I need to build a model now. So I'm just a big promoter of kind of getting physical early doors in terms of proportion and scale and usability for all sorts of reasons. But normally things get highlighted early doors from doing that. And I think there's a making models when there's less obvious reasons to make a model is just one of my thoughts. But maybe there's a tendency to just jump into CAD and be too CAD heavy.
I'd say that's across the. I say not everywhere, but it's very typical in it. Again, catching myself here. It's typical in the in-house places in which I have worked that there's an emphasis on let's get CAD in quickly. So I don't know what shape it is yet. I'm not, how am I going to specify dimensions on a radius where I really don't know what I kind of want to draw yet. Let me draw it and make versions of it and go downstairs in the workshop and sand it for an hour. Let me do that, and then I'll be able to CAD it up really, really quickly. But it's like, no, we need the CAD done. Like, okay, I find that a bit challenging. I'm paraphrasing. I'm making a total nonsense. But yeah, that always struck me as the attitude. There's a rush to get into the details and not explore the stuff that we don't even know yet.
Yeah. One thing sometimes like with the key shot stuff quickly is that you can you talk to someone and then you ask, well, how long did that take you? And they'll go, it took me like weeks to do that. And you think an agency doesn't get weeks to do that. Yeah. And so sometimes you might be looking at these portfolios going, wow, they're amazing. But then it comes down to the attitude piece of, could this person work under a heavy time pressure deadline? Are they going to be able to reach those kind of standards? So I suppose that's the balancing act, isn't it, for when you're...
Yeah. And I think one of the key skills that gets developed for the people that we do take on and work with us is, I'd say one of the key skills that I see growth in is the awareness and ability to know to what level is something appropriate to be taken at what point in a project to kind of progress the project in a meaningful way.
Yeah,
it's probably one of the number one skills that gets developed quickly.
Yeah. So
that's why I like to see the process and an outline of like what's your approach to this project. I give you a brief and it's this deep, or if it's in this industry, whatever. And what are the pieces of work you're going to do, and when, and what decisions we're going to make. That's what I want to see from designers. Like if I was hiring a designer, and if I'm like going out for work, that's the piece of work that I can create that's either going to get the job or not. Is my project structure.
Yeah, one.
Sorry, Brad, you were going to say.
No, sorry. So we're coming up to an hour, and one question we do like to end things on, Nick, is I gave you the slight heads up yesterday, so you could get your thinking cap on. was what's the strangest brief you've ever come across? Are any email subjects that have come through over the last couple of years where you've gone, guys, you've got to see this. This idea is the worst thing this idea is one of the worst things I've ever seen. Or
I appreciate you sending that through yesterday. There's three that I kind of thought of that were, when you said strange, I think you thought strange in being shit. But I kind of thought it of just kind of more like unusual ones, not necessarily being bad.
Well, even the one we had last time, Drew, of Paul, who mentioned, we asked him what his strangest brief was, and it wasn't really that strange when he explained it, but it felt strange when he originally came across.
Radio in a fridge.
Yeah, a radio in a fridge. I think that's bizarre. But then he explained the cultural context of it, and it's like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So you're absolutely right. It's not strange in terms of this is the shittest thing I've ever seen, but it's just strange in terms of what the bloody hell is this thing?
Yeah.
And then,
so this was strange in a way that it was just a very different type of project in terms of all the stuff that we normally work on. But we did some work for a cyber security firm called Garrison, and Garrison had created a bit of software/hardware that essentially what it did was, rather than your computer being connected to the network and the internet, and so if you've got a virus, your computer gets damaged or whatever, your actual computer that you care about, this is more in a professional setting, but the computer that you care about isn't connected to the internet. And there's a bit of software, hardware that that is connected to the internet. And what you're seeing on your machine is a visual representation. So it just looks exactly the same, but it's sending that data to your machine without you actually being connected to the internet. So if there was any sort of threat or whatever, you're completely safe. And there's just this sacrificial product. And the challenge that they had was, in terms of trade shows and getting attention, it's quite a difficult thing to articulate and explain. I'm sure I've butchered that as well, but we didn't work on anything regarding that. That's their development. But what they wanted was something that they could take to a trade show that was a bit of fun and could get people talking and asking the questions of what it did. So we ended up developing the world's first typing robot. And the whole thing was designed and manufactured and all engineered. So it was a robotic system that there was a laptop on one desk, and then Ravi the robot would sit next to you at his desk. And if you went up to the laptop and typed, "Hi, this is the Design Truth podcast," it would, Ravi sat next to you, would write it in real time, typing with his robotic hands on a keyboard. So it was showing the fact that it's doing it simultaneously on his screen. So, and it was just an odd project, but one that actually was seen all the way through and manufactured and machined in this entire robotic system. But that was quite a cool, unusual one to work on. The other one was, there was a robotic, because we've got kind of robotic capability in-house, there was another one that was a robotic sandwich maker restaurant concept that there was a very wealthy investor wanted to open a restaurant in London under that theme of a robotic.
Didn't want to make a ham and cheese sarnie anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, so he had this idea for a restaurant that it was a robot that was basically Subway, but a robot doing it all. And the idea that it's a bit of theatre and the experience of what you see. So we actually did phases as part of that project and delivered it up to a certain phase. In the end, they didn't want to invest further. We did point out realistically how much funding that would actually take to get all the way through. Like I said, it was a very wealthy investor, but it didn't go much further. But we actually did have a robot in the end and just quite strange creative problems that you don't normally solve when you're developing a medical device, like how is lettuce and rocket going to behave as part of the mechanism to get that into a sandwich, and slicing cucumber or salami or whatever. There was some quite interesting challenges
I'm sort of picturing. I'm sure it isn't like this, but I'm picturing one of those arcade games. You know, where you try to grab. I don't know.
All right. Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, I want lettuce in there. I'm overshot. Oh, I'll just go for it anyway. Oh, damn it, I've got cucumber. And then, you try to do the same sort of thing.
What happens when you get to the sauce?
It's
carnage.
Yeah. So we have had the typical ones that you probably get of, the really bad concepts that just wouldn't go anywhere. Yeah. But the first project I ever actually worked on at IDC was it's a process called vascular anastomosis. So the first project I ever worked on was a device used by vascular surgeons to stitch an artery back together again. That was like the first thing I worked on. So that had some.
There you go. If you ever wanted a bigger endorsement of working for IDC, 1 minute you're looking at stitching arteries together, and the next minute you're looking at sandwiches. So that's the best endorsement you can give.
That robot sandwich maker was that we actually had to test loads of different types of bread.
So you put on about 2
in and around London.
Put on about 2 stone during the process.
Yeah. To try a lot of bread as part of that project.
Yeah, cool. Whilst I got you, I had a funny story about IDC once when an old colleague of mine went for a visit there, and he took a colleague. Her name was Rachel, and she was quite a heavy Christian. And they're going around the workshop, and I don't know whether Paul gave like a massive heads up that he's bringing a colleague along. And I think IDC were doing a lot of work with sex toys at the time. And basically, she just kind of walked into this workshop, and there's just like sex toys everywhere in this workshop. Yeah, it's just like her first meeting to a design studio ever, and she's been scarred for life ever since. But
we do still have the sex toys on display as part of our conference room and upstairs setup. It was always funny that everyone always kind of looks at the other products, kind of guessing what they are, and then there's always what's that?
Yeah. Oh, it's the V.
I thought you were going to say that everyone gets to that and knows exactly what it is.
That's the V7. That's the V7, isn't that one? That's good battery life on that one. Yeah.
Battery life on that's shocking.
Yeah, honestly, the V8 is so much better on that than that one. But yeah, Nick, absolute pleasure in coming on, and you are our first ever guest on a Design Truth Live. So I'm sure that was also a career highlight of yours as well. So
yes, definitely, bro.
Yeah, of course, and
no problem. It's been good.